Welcome back to the channel. We're going over the SP 500, the Nasdaq 100, and exactly what happened with the market today and what I was trading specifically in this market and how I see us moving going into the next 2 days. We have some very big news surrounding us and things we need to talk about. Before we get into that, I have to ask you to consider doing two things: liking and subscribing to the video. I'm posting almost every single day and you are getting the updates as we see fit, and you can be the judge if we've been accurate here on the channel or not, but I always try to give you the honest truth with a non-biased approach. The first thing I want to talk about is not even about the chart. We're going to go here in a second, but we have CPI coming up. Everyone knows this is coming up Wednesday, but what does the White House have to say about this? Right at the end of the day, 3:30 p.m., 30 minutes after market closes, you get this from Bloomberg. Expect new CPI data to be highly elevated, the White House. We have heard this before. It's very important to know we have. If we go back to the previous CPI data that we have had, we go over here to news, go to economic calendar. We're going to go to this week, and then you're going to come down. You can see all this information for yourself. It's on investing.com. It has all these times, so you can see these as well. I recommend keeping up with these because it does move the market. And what you can see is CPI, highly rated, 3 stars, very important here. And you can go back and actually see the last time we had the CPI data being released. And when you come in, you can see as you increase on CPI, that means more inflation, typically more downfall for the market based on current overall standings. Now, you came out for the past 2 months at 0.6, 0.6, and that's kind of the forecast now. If you come out 0.6, I would think it would be not necessarily bullish for the market, but it wouldn't be the worst thing possible. They could possibly say that inflation may have kind of topped off here, if that is the premise of what comes out with this information and this data. That's something you need to be looking out for. However, this is something that we haven't really seen here, and people want to say whatever they want. The White House wants to say it. Before, they were saying inflation regarding energy is going to be up. Now they're going specifically to CPI data, trying to quote unquote prepare people. Now, one thing to know is oil prices have dropped. Do I think they will rise again? Yes, I do think they will rise. But looking here, if we come out above a 0.6, in my opinion, it's going to get nasty here on the market. So let's see exactly what's happening on the market. Let's see exactly how we're moving. The first thing I want to cover is NQ. This is the Nasdaq futures. I am on a 4-hour time frame, but I want you to look at how we traded through the day. So just bear with me. Now I'm going to pull up the opens indicator so we can just have a clear movement of what happened on the day. And this right here represents your open on NQ, basically from last night going into today. This right here represents your market open overall, and you started dropping down. Now I'm going to go to the 15-minute chart so you can see. This red dotted line represents what? It's the 12,000 marker on the Nasdaq. And I've been so adamant about this level because it is, in my opinion, the line in the sand. And so what you can see here is going back to Friday and going back into Thursday, you can see these key levels here. You can see you came, you broke above it, retested, pushed up. You retested it once again right here. We remember on Friday, that's why we were bullish. You pushed up. Came in once again. What happened here? Came back down, tested it again. You bounced up. This was earlier this morning, roughly 1 a.m. on the futures. Now, what happened at market open? And what did I say? If you stay above 12,000, you remain bullish. If you break below it, what are we? Quote unquote, we are bearish. I make it very simple. I give you a line and I tell you my opinion on what's happening. Now, I did anticipate we might see some potential upside into Wednesday. However, once you broke, and this is just based on market open, you didn't even get any trending. This was right at market open, 830 marker, boom, straight down. Once you broke below that level and you held below it, what does that mean? You are bearish, in my opinion, and I'm looking for more downside. Now, this is the icing on the cake for the day right here. You come in and look where you tested right here. You came all the way back up from the lows of 11.86. You bounced up. You hit 12.004, and boom, nothing but downside from that level. What does that mean to me? In my opinion, it looks like downside is coming going into tomorrow prior to CPI. Now, I also want to highlight some of the movements that we've seen prior to CPI as well, just to give you an update. However, I do want to mention my short-term targets. Target number 1 will be around 11.7 flat. all the way to 11,750. This is a key range I will be watching for a wick, but then I do anticipate we could see a little bit of trending in this area right here where we sat at for almost a whole day, going back to July 6th. So possible that you get a wick down and then kind of trend in this area before you come back down even further, depending on CPI data and how that is released. If you get below 11.7, in my opinion, you're looking for imminent downside down to those lows of 11.4 and possibly making new lows in a hurry as well. 11.7 has been the line in the sand. It's been a major overall area. Come back to the 1 hour chart. You can see, look how many tests you've had here. 1, 2, coming back down, 3, 4, 5. So you can see this is a major level. If you break through it, in my opinion, you have to start targeting more downside to that monthly 11.5, 11.4, break 11.4, ultimately new lows are what we're looking for. CPI is going to set the tone. Now, again, I covered this in, I believe, the last video going into CPI and my overall opinion on this. Now, you can see June 10th was the last overall CPI data point, and I want to just give you a look into how we moved going into that day. Now, I highlighted it right here, but the day before, this was a very interesting time as well. And it's kind of setting up in a very similar fashion. I don't want to say it's the same exact movement, but you can see for 2 weeks on Nasdaq, if you were here on the channel, you remember we were trending here. We would come up to 12.8, come back down to 12.5, and it would just ping pong back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And then the day before CPI got released, you broke below that level. And I said, once you break below that level of locally 12.4, in my opinion, it's setting up for shorts. And then we entered shorts, obviously, once you broke. And then the next day, CPI data came out bad. And then boom, you just overall went down. And then we've also mentioned PPI data is typically when we find that bottom. Again, you can go back and back test this for the last 2 sessions that we've had this. Here you had your PPI, which set the overall tone. But this is the most recent. So this is your last month and then the month before that here. CPI, you drop, PPI, you pump back up. So as I'm looking here, you can see prior to that day before, you're getting some of that drop. So these are things that I'm looking for here as well. And it looks like we're setting the tone back with that as well. However, what I will say is PPI is the day after CPI. So again, you're going to want to be paying attention to all this information as it's being released and pay attention to these data points. But as of right now, in my opinion, you're still sitting locally at this support, this level about 11.85. You are respecting it, the same level that we were trending at before we got this push up to around 12.15, which we talked about as well. So you are sitting here trying to hold it. But again, you still don't look that strong, especially with that rejection that we saw there at 12,000 on Nasdaq. So I am looking for the potential of more downside, especially with CPI right around the corner. But now I want to take a quick look at SPY and what's going on here. Now we saw Friday's highs at locally 390.65. We came out of the gates, and again, I want to go to a little bit of a smaller time frame so you can see the actual price action taking place here. You can see immediate downside. You come back up, get almost to the top of where that gap was, and then get rejected back down. But you didn't really make any headwinds back up. You didn't get too much strength. And look at the strength of that overall rejection, pushing you ultimately to a newer low on the day as well. So in my opinion, the strength of the bears here near the end of the day especially were very strong. That is my personal opinion here. Looking at VIX as well, this was one of the things that was interesting. You were seeing all that downside, but in my opinion, near the end of the day specifically, beginning of the day, look at all that upside you had on VIX. This made sense. You saw that massive breakout, the whole gap up, but then into the end of the day, it's really not that much if you're really considering it. You push all the way from locally 25.8 to around 26.6, about an 80-cent move on VIX, and then you drop back down. So in my opinion, this has a lot of room to keep going. You came down to that 24 region, which we mentioned, where we targeted on VIX as well. But now you're trying to push back up. You're still getting that volatility, and it's just lining up perfectly with CPI. So again, I'm not telling people to go heavy on puts or anything like that, but as I look at this, it's just the same story we've been hearing. Now, I do want to tell you the stock that I have right now and the stock that I am playing. Me and Jay Ream both are trading the same exact stock, and it's going to be Costco's. Costco is my current play. I got in a little high. This is the play that I got in right here. 3.85 entries, July 22nd, 480 puts. But I want to show you this chart because it has me pretty excited. And I will mention Costco and XLP stocks have dropped significantly after CPI. Am I going to hold through CPI? I don't know. If we get the drop tomorrow, I can't honestly give you an answer about that, so I don't know, but I'll let you know tomorrow what I'm doing with it. But what I want to do is go back to the 4-hour chart. Now, as we look here, you can see, one, you're in a clear ascending wedge. look at the level in which you're at right now. Look at this massive resistance that you're sitting at locally at 500. This, in my opinion, is a major level. On top of it with that wedge. Now, if we look at the overall bounce that you have gotten since lows as well, it lines up, in my opinion, with another clear-cut rejection. So again, what I want to highlight here is going right into this overall chart and then show you exactly what I'm looking for here. Now, I believe that you've gotten your ABC correction. So typically when you get your drop and you're looking for a correction, right? You're looking for a 1, 2, 3 type of correction. You can look at this on TradingView. They have all the drawing tools if you want to use them, but typically it's just an ABC correction, right? And that's what you got. And I like the way that this formed on top of with that wet, just like that was saying. And then on top of it, you're going into CPI, which has been hurting these consumer staples. Costco also came out today with their CEO and said they expect to have moderate growth going with this, all things considered. However, they see inflation growing faster than their growth can maintain, which in my opinion is extremely bearish once again. So these are things that I'm looking at here on the broad scale market. I don't have too many trades open. I'm not even looking. I'm not looking to overtrade this, right? We have the key data coming and we know what's going to happen based on that data. Once data is released, then we know that's your opportunity to strike in the market. And that's when you want to be making your decisions. And before I forget, I do want to say, I believe Bitcoin tonight, most likely you will get a test of 20,000, which is that monthly level. So 20,000 to 20,000, 50, whatever it may be right here. You're going to get a test of that level. I'll have a whole bunch of alerts set down there. You will at least get that test, and that's what I'm looking for tonight. I'm already in puts and shorts there. Again, if you're not in Margex, I have a link somewhere down below. This is my current position there. That's what I'm looking at. So overall, that's what I'm looking at here on Nasdaq, looking at SPY. It's just setting up for a downside. Now, again, going into tomorrow, I want to show you a little bit what's happening here on Bookmap. And before we go too heavy into this, I want to highlight that I don't see massive movement coming tomorrow. I see a lot of chop. I see a slow moving. Maybe you go to the downside, but it's going to be slow. I don't see massive volume kicking in. But I want to say that going into CPI again, if you want to be patient, that's your best bet. Just wait till CPI is released and then trade based on the data given. Because if it's bad, obviously you're going to set a trend for the downside like we have moved previously. But looking here at Bookmap, again, if you're new to the channel, you may not be familiar with this. You may be a little bit confused. But it's basically a heat map of the chart showing you exactly where buyers and sellers are. The end. That's all it is. So as you move from black into red, that means there's more buyers. So as we look here, you can see this level right here was a massive level of support for ES, which was locally about 3850, 3852. You bounced all morning at that level, and then you started making those highs back up to 38.85. Now, here at the end of the day, again, what I wanted to mention is when SPY broke that level, you made a new low on the day with ES as well. So those are things that I am looking at. Now, I also want to mention what was happening here. I'm going to actually get rid of icebergs really quickly, but your volume, in my opinion, was pretty deceiving. So you saw that upside volume on CVD, your cumulative volume delta, pushing you back up. But once you turned positive, you peaked out, which again was at Nasdaq when it hit 12,000, and then boom, sellers took over from there. Now, the one interesting aspect of this is if you come back and you look here, you ended up getting a lot of those ice block orders coming at the end of the day. Those icebergs were kicking in, and those are a good example of those dark pool orders. So in my opinion, people were asking what I was seeing happening there. Was that quote unquote bullish? Because sometimes when you're getting these massive orders, this blue line right here, that's what represents these hidden orders, dark pool data coming in. What that indicates is that those are buyers. When you get buyers, you can also get sellers. There was not very many sellers here today. But what I want to mention from that is this could easily just be hedging on the overall market. And the biggest thing to take from this was the Twitter post, in my opinion. The White House came out, and this is a really aggressive statement on the market, I guess just trying to prepare for an overall drop, that they see CPI being extremely elevated. And that's a big red flag for me. And again, if you want to get some of these updates on some of these trades, I post a lot of this. You don't have to be in Discord. I post a lot of stuff on Twitter as well. So make sure you're following. The link is somewhere down below, but the Costco try to put it out there during market hours so you could get all this information as well. And then this was the other red flag that is just being spewed onto the market. You have our Fed coming out and saying it doesn't seem like the U.S. economy has been in a recession for the last 2 quarters. But if you look at the last 2 quarters, you've dropped over 100 points on the S&P. So if this is not a recession, what is a recession? How much lower are we really setting up to go if our own Fed is saying this right here, a 25% or 20% drop in the entire market is not a recession? So these are big questions we need to be asking and things that are very concerning for me personally. Again, Nasdaq, what are my targets? You are seeing a little bit of support here on the 4-hour. You are trying to bounce at that level, but I am looking ultimately for an 11.7, 11.75 test. How you react to that will be very important on the Nasdaq. On the S&P, what am I looking at here? This chart, a little bit more deceiving, a little bit harder to track, but I'm looking for a test locally of about 380 flat, possibly down to 376.5. So again, this is where I see us going personally. I'm looking for this key area. I'm looking for some of this downside down here. Again, that's a very big zone. So I hate to say it to you, but overall, SPY has been a lot uglier of a chart than the Nasdaq has. So that's where I'm looking. All my focus is on the NQ and how we're moving in the after hours going into tomorrow. If you have questions, post them down below. I will try to get to all your questions. There's been a lot of bots here lately, but I'm trying to go through and make sure I'm answering all the questions as we see fit. And then as we look really quickly, before I let you out of here, as we look at some of these big names, I want to highlight the big six, which we've been talking about. Apple, Microsoft, Nvidia, Google, Amazon, Tesla. This is basically a little index of them. As you can track it, you're seeing that rejection from the top of that level. Again, if you break above this 3,900 level here on the big six, we're extremely bullish. But until then, you have to play the trend, and it's looking like the trend wants to come down. On top of that, you can look at junk bonds, look at the overall risk on the market. Again, one of the best indicators, and you can see you didn't get that much upside here on junk bonds today, and it looks like you want to start breaking down deeper and finding more lows here on junk bonds, which have been one of the best indicators on the market for potential downside or getting that breakout to the upside. So if you come out on junk bonds and you break this level right here, I'm anticipating some pretty drastic downside on the market as well. Again, that's what I'm looking at. I'll have an update for you guys tomorrow, how we're moving, stocks I'm trading, if there's anything new that I'm adding as well. Remember, the Discord link is down below if you want to check us out. Have a good one, traders.